Welcome back to the tank. We're here at Adobe Summit, day 3, the final day of Adobe Summit. You can feel that people are already now starting to kind of reflect on what they've learned as they map their way through maybe their last breakout session. We still have some great content for you here live. I'm joined by Rana June, CEO of Lightwave.
Hi.
And I like to call Rana the maven of emotion technology. And Rana, maybe it's not fair to say that without defining what is emotion technology, and who better qualified than yourself. So can you maybe give us a feel for what that means to you?
Absolutely, and you're very kind, Adam. I appreciate that. To me, emotion tech is the collection of biofeedback and analysis of that data, ideally in support of a metric around experience. I think, as we all know, if emotion is the currency of experience, then there needs to be a way to describe that and to validate that we are being effective at creating that. So emotion tech can be anything from facial recognition to biofeedback from things like heart rate or any other emotion metrics. There's even some very interesting ambient measurements such as thermal imaging or audio detection for valence. There's a lot of ways that you can start to derive signals from the body that can help to tell that story.
Cool. So not only can you define it, you believed enough in it to build a company around it.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about Lightwave, which I have described here as an interactive biometric data platform company.
So if you think about it, the last frontier of data, marketers have access to so much data, one could even argue too much data.
One could.
I like to say that this is essentially, these are proxy metrics that we look at as marketers. They aren't direct measurements, but really this is the last frontier of data, human data. It's the most personal, it's the most direct, and certainly there's a lot of ways that this will be used in the future, but I believe that this is going to be as impactful as Google indexing the web. Because if you consider that, we've never been able to know at scale about emotion and impact of experience. So I really believe, at least from my perspective, this will be the next shift forward as far as both integration into technology, but also for the ability for marketers to create, that truly contextualized and personalized future that they imagine. I absolutely believe that in a, I've been calling it a post-click world, that the efficacy metric will be emotion. There's no other way to derive that. So we're very excited about it.
It's interesting, right? Because I think as marketers, it's common sense that what we see and what we experience impacts how we feel.
Yes.
But it feels like now that the imperative to become an experience business, that we're now in an experience economy, that it's almost like we're catching up to the common sense. We're catching up to the fact that emotion drives us. So I know that you've done some work with companies to try and sort of capture that and understand how emotion drives us and then translate that into things that they might do in whether in their marketing or their business. So maybe what are some points of advice that you have for people as they're thinking about their role as a marketer or as a steward of experience? When should they be thinking about emotion?
Well, I'm very happy you asked this question. I think the number one thing I tell people is you're not late. So this is a very new field. Even 5 years ago was the glimmers of the beginnings of this. And the reason for that is that intuition about emotion is something that we've had to do. There hasn't been the ability to do this at scale. And even in the scientific community, if a neuroscientist wants to go and explore the impact of an emotional experience, it's a very arduous process historically and at a very small sample set. And what's happened in the past 5 years is that, with big data and with the ability to analyze these vast unstructured data sets and all the other ways that we're starting to be able to do this, not just in emotion, but in every sense of the word around data, now suddenly we can get to the heart, literally and figuratively, of these questions that we want to answer. So even today, doing simple things that are related to this are going to create the foundation. And I would say it's even, because it's so early, the best practices aren't established yet. And so we get to decide those. And certainly the more that marketers start to consider what those emotionally driven questions are that they have, the closer the technology can get to defining them. And the other piece of advice that I would give is that for every business, that emotional hypothesis is different. And it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. And there certainly needs to be a bit of work that happens emotions from each enterprise or each company to determine what are the emotions that we want to create, or what is success for us in that experiential business sense. And obviously we love to work with companies in those ways, because that's where this becomes very exciting, and I think we're just starting to figure this out right now.
Right, well, I agree. And I know it's been very revealing for Adobe to work with Lightwave here at Summit. As Steve mentioned, Steve Cook just a minute ago, that you have constructed an emotion chamber here for us at Summit, and we've put several people through, hundreds of people now, through an experience where they've witnessed different scenarios and you've been able to measure their reaction. I found one of the most compelling things was, even though there were some mundane activities that they were observing and some pretty sensational, that there was never a moment when people were not feeling. And I think even though some people might feel like, you know what, the thing that I'm responsible for as a marketer isn't that glamorous, maybe it isn't sensational, but still I think the important thing is that people are feeling. So as sort of an expert in measuring and crawling into that, what would you say to the person who feels like, well, maybe emotion doesn't really play a role in what I'm trying to accomplish?
I love to use, I think if anyone's seen anything about Lightwave or seen our work, there's this through line of art throughout everything we do. And I will use a design reference to kind of answer this question. Sometimes white space is the most important part of the design. And sometimes no emotion is the most important part of the emotion tech that you're measuring. If your job is to reduce stress for somebody, that is an experience in and of itself. It's not about creating, this absolutely out of this world psychedelic experience every time you do something. I don't think that's always what you require from an experience. Sometimes the experience is about being calm and peaceful, but even being able to measure and the efficacy of that is a very important part of it. And mundane things are experiences, absolutely. We absolutely feel that, and they can always be improved. I think in a lot of ways, this technology is not only for creating experience, it's also for validating that the decisions that a marketer is making are the right ones. And I personally feel that. If you think about it, when your heart rate goes above 100 beats per minute, that's considered tachycardia. This is a negative impact. And even something like what we're seeing in the emotion chamber, you're watching a video for 3 minutes, and even that is creating that empathy response that people have a heart rate change of 20 beats per minute during that time. These emotional journeys happen consistently. And the reason I bring up the advanced accelerated heart rate is that if your job is, let's say, to create that calm, tranquility effect, and people are feeling stressed out, you need to know that. And people won't be able to tell you that. Sometimes people, they feel that a self-reported survey is going to give them the answers that they want, but people aren't very effective necessarily at communicating these kinds of emotions. So it is important to have this level of measurement. And I think this is, people are starting to just crack this today.
I agree. Well, it's been fantastic speaking with you.
Thank you.
And getting to know more about your technology and your company. Thank you, Rana June, for being with us in the tank and for participating in Summit. We'll look forward to learning more about what Lightwave is up to in the future.
Thank you so much, Adam. Thanks.
And that wraps us up for our session with Rana. Thank you for joining us in the tank, and that's a wrap.